Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. As always, I'm so happy to be back here again with a new video. And if you were new here, hello and welcome. Why don't you stick around to see what kind of shocking true crime story I have for you today. And also please do subscribe to the channel for more true crime content. Alright, I hope you guys are good and that you've had a good day so far. And for this week's video, like I mentioned, it's going to be a tearjerker. If you saw my community post, I think it was yesterday, this video is going to be, no, not yesterday, well, depending on when you see this video. But if you saw my recent community post, I did mention that this week's video is going to be quite a heartbreaking one. So as all the other ones were, but this one, trust me, it's very heartbreaking. So with that being said, in this case, I will be talking about murder, sexual assault, and also abuse. So if you are sensitive to that kind of content, viewer discretion is advised. But with that being said, sit back, relax, and let me tell you all about the case of Stephen Harvey. Now, back in 1952 in Cheltenham, England, a baby girl named Lynn Catherine was born. And Lynn was born in a financially moderate family. However, her childhood, on the other hand, was anything but normal. It was said that Lynn's father was very abusive, and there are even allegations that when Lynn was only 13 years old, her father had a habit of molesting and also sexually assaulting her at just the age of 13 on a regular basis. Now, this definitely had a traumatic effect on Lynn's childhood, and as a matter of fact, her childhood ended up taking a dive for the worst. So much so that she ended up getting involved in multiple sexual relationships with a number of older men. And it got to a point where by the age of 15, she ended up falling pregnant at the age of 15. But in 1967, when Lynn's child was born, her child was taken away from her and the child was put in the adoption system. Then just a few years later, Lynn got married for the first time and also had 2 kids from this marriage. However, this marriage didn't really last long because when she was only 22 in 1974, Lynn got divorced from her husband. And in that process, her 2 kids were also taken away from her. Then 2 years later, in 1976, Lynn met a man named Spencer Hoare, and they got married and also had a son together named John, making Lynn the mother of a total of 4 kids now. Then 3 years into her marriage with Spencer, Lynn got pregnant again, but this time not by her own husband. She was having an affair with a man who was a lodger at their home, and when she gave birth to her daughter Marianne, Lynn decided to come clean about who the father of this child is. But after she did that, both men decided to just abandon her, leaving her with her newborn daughter and also her son from her marriage with Spencer. But again, it didn't take Lynn that long to find a new partner, because in 1981 she met a man who was 3 years younger than him, and they had a relationship and they ended up getting married, and they also had 2 kids of their own. And this man is named Stephen Harvey. Then in 1990, the Harvey family moved to South Africa from England, and they moved to a suburb in the province of Mpumalanga. And if you're not from South Africa, provinces in South Africa are like how you would classify the United States into different states. So in South Africa we have 9 provinces, and Mpumalanga is one of these provinces. And because Stephen already had training as an electrician, it was very easy for him to find work in South Africa, and sometimes he would also hire local men to come and assist him and also do some work on his property as well. And one of these men that he would hire was a man named Mpho Mokoena, who was born in 1962. And Mpho always, even though he was born in poverty, he always held the principle that crime will never be an option. He always wanted to work for his money. And in 1990, when Stephen and his family moved to South Africa, Mpho Mokoena was around 27 years old at the time, and also he had his own family that he wanted to provide for. Mpho did a few occasional jobs for the Harvey family here and there, and according to this man, there were a few instances where he noticed some very strange behavior from the Harvey family, but he didn't exactly go into detail about what he meant by that, but he did say that there were some times where he would notice some very strange behavior. Then in 1982, Stephen got into a car accident that forced him to have his leg amputated, and also this got him to lose his job. And according to Lynn, this is when they had a turning point in their marriage, because Stephen would now abuse alcohol, but she also ended up joining him in this habit. Then a few years later, Lynn started deciding that her marriage was no longer working for her anymore. However, this time she did not want to go through the entire process of divorce again. So instead, she decided to come up with a much more permanent solution, or should I say a much more deadly solution. Now, it isn't really known when she decided to involve her kids, her own 2 kids, into this plan. But what is known is that on the night of the 25th of September in 1999, Stephen and Lynn were home alone because the kids went out to a bowling alley that night, and Stephen was also heavily drunk, this time more than usual. Stephen also had no idea that on that night, his house would also become the target of an intruder. Something else that he had no idea of was that the intruder was actually a man who was his own employee. This intruder was Mpho Mokoena, the same man who believed that crime was never an option. And everything just happened so quickly because Mpho broke into the bedroom where Stephen was sleeping and he started stabbing him frantically. And even though Stephen tried to defend himself, eventually he ended up getting overpowered by Mpho. And once the struggle was over, Stephen was left on the floor bleeding out because of a slash on his throat. And Mpho Mokoena decided to steal the television and the computer in the house before running away from the scene. Lynn called the police, and according to the police, she actually seemed like she was distressed about this. And when the paramedics arrived, they also realized that it was too late. There was nothing they could do to save Stephen's life. And then finally, when the forensic investigators got done with the scene, Stephen's body was taken to the morgue. Now, there wasn't any sign of forced entry into the house, and investigators also realized that the back door was left unlocked. And when questioned about this, Lynn said they always left the back door unlocked unless everyone in the family was already in the house. She also told them that she didn't hear anything. She only got to know what happened when she went to the bedroom to try to get some sleep, but found her husband on the floor instead. At first, this was thought to be a robbery gone wrong. The police believed that the intruder believed that the house was empty and that he would just take what he wanted and leave. But when he saw that there actually was someone in the house, that's when everything went sideways, leading to Stephen's death. And apparently this was the conclusion that investigators almost went with, had it not been for Lynn's strange behavior afterwards and also a telephone call that came from England. When Lynn was giving out a sworn statement, she was questioned about whether she knew if her husband had any life insurance, and she said she had no idea that Stephen had any life insurance. She had no idea of any life insurance that he may have. However, this was revealed to be a lie because it was found out that a day after Stephen's funeral, Lynn was seen at the offices of an insurance company in Vanderbijl Park. And apparently she was there to find out when the insurance money would pay out. But she was then told that the policy had fallen behind on payments, and so it was no longer valid at that point. And Lynn got very angry about this, and she said she would come back with the evidence to show that it wasn't true that it fell behind on payments. And she did end up coming with this evidence. And then in December of 1999, after going back and forth with the insurance company, an amount of 500,000 Rand was deposited into Lynn's bank account, and then she and her kids went on a spending spree. The police started noticing Lynn's behavior after this, and with that in mind, they also got a telephone call from a woman in England named June Cox, and it turns out that June Cox is actually Stephen's mother. After hearing about the death of her son, June decided to call the police in South Africa and ask them to look into Lynn and her 2 kids, specifically her older kids, John and Marianne, because she believed believed that they could have had something to do with this. Lynn Harvey spent half of that money during that month of December. She bought her son John a new car and also a whole lot of gifts for her other kids as well. And while she was in the process of selling her current property with the aim of buying another property, the police knocked on her door. And then in January of 2000, they also approached her son John because they had a few questions they wanted to ask him down at the station. And within just a week, Mphomokoena, Lynn Harvey, and her daughter Marianne, as well as her son John, had all been arrested. Lynn's two younger kids were put under the care of some of Stephen's relatives who also lived in South Africa. And when it came time for Lynn's bail hearing, she decided to stick to a story of her own. She claimed that she was a victim of domestic violence. She said that her husband Stephen was very abusive towards her and he would beat her quite a lot. And she said after the accident he had, things only got worse. Lynn said that her breaking point was when she saw Stephen acting inappropriately with their 11-year-old daughter. After seeing this, she said that is when she decided that Stephen had to die so they can all be free of him. Lynn also said that she believed that Stephen had also sexually assaulted his stepdaughter Marianne as well. However, Marianne, on the other hand, decided that she would not try to turn things in the favor of her mother. She decided to turn against Lynn, Mphomokoena, and her brother by becoming a state witness. Marianne denied that Stephen was a frequently unnecessarily violent man, and she said that the entire family was actually violent and Stephen only lashed out if someone came at him first. And apparently, her mom, Lynn, was actually the one who was violent and abusive towards her husband. Whenever she got angry, she would hit Stephen, and then she would also emotionally abuse him by openly telling him about her cheating acts with other men. And this happened quite a lot after Stephen had his accident. So she constantly tried to drag his self-esteem even further down, despite the fact that it was already down from the accident. During a testimony, Marianne also revealed the other plans that were made on other attempts to take Stephen's life. She testified that at some point they planned for her to be the one to kill Stephen and make it look like it was self-defense. And if that didn't work, their plan B was to have John's girlfriend try to seduce Stephen so that Lynn can walk in on them and then kill Stephen in some sort of fit of rage. However, John's girlfriend ended up backing out of this plan. And then after this, it was decided that John would find someone to kill Stephen for them. And this is when John approached his stepdad's employee, Mphomokoena. When Marianne was questioned about why she and John agreed to help end Stephen's life, she said they were manipulated by their mother's lies. She said that Lynn had always been good at manipulating people into doing whatever she wanted. Marianne said that Lynn filled her son's head with lies about how his stepdad abused her lots of times, and even though she didn't believe her mom, John, on the other hand, believed everything. Marianne also testified that they were all aware of the huge life insurance payout they would get as a result of his death. She said that Lynn talked about the insurance money a number of times, so to Marianne, this was the real reason Lynn wanted to have her husband dead. And this entire time, Lynn was in the courtroom, and her attorney tried to discredit Marianne by making claims that she actually suffered from multiple personality disorder. Now, Mphomokoena, on the other hand, was approached by John about this job 7 months before the murder took place. John offered Mpho 40,000 to kill Stephen, but at first Mpho refused to do this, and then John came back again, and this time he offered Mphomokoena 60,000 rand to kill Stephen, and even though he was a bit reluctant, he ended up agreeing to do it. Mpho said that he also felt bad about doing this, but he said that after giving his word to John that he would actually do this, he somehow felt bound by it. John called Mpho every day leading to the day of the murder. According to Mpomokwena, John didn't really specify how he wanted the killing to happen. He just wanted it to happen. And then on the night when everything was supposed to happen, Lynn is the one who let Mpo into the house and showed him where Stephen was sleeping. When it was time for Lynn to take the stand, she tried to play things off as a battered woman. She decided to use her past as a defense. She said that she had suffered abuse at a very young age. She had a very abusive childhood, and that having her child, her first child that she had at 15, and her other 2 kids from her first marriage taken away from her had affected her very much. She also claimed that she divorced 2 of her husbands because they were very violent towards her, and she also claimed that Stephen was the same as well. Lynn said that Stephen was also a sexual sadist and that he would only climax during sex when Lynn was in pain. She also said that he was not only an alcoholic, but he was also addicted to his pain medication, and he also smoked a lot of marijuana. Lynn also said that shortly before Stephen died, they got into an argument about something that happened when Marianne was only 3 years old. She said Stephen and Marianne were bathing together, and then Marianne happened to touch his private parts. However, Stephen did not discipline her for doing this. He just let it happen. She said she also saw him do this with her other kids as well, and she also said that he was very abusive towards the animals they had on the property and also their employees as well. So she tried as much as she could to paint a very nasty image of Stephen, but it's not really known if there was ever any evidence of any of these claims. And also, she couldn't provide any evidence for any of the physical injuries she claimed Stephen caused her to have. Her son John did not take the stand at the trial. However, the statements he made during the interrogation ended up being used as evidence. John said he never wanted to be involved in the murder. He said that he was only the middleman between Mpomokwena and his mother, Lynn. But at first, it seemed like John wanted to protect his mother and his sister. He wanted to take the blame for everything, so he wanted to take the eyes off of them. But the more time he spent in prison and the more the trial went on, the more he started changing his mind and the more he started realizing that he was being manipulated by his mother. In a statement, John said he really loved Stephen and that Stephen raised him well. He also said that his stepfather did not deserve to die like that. But at the end of it all, Lynn Harvey, John Hoare, and Mpomokwena were found guilty of the murder of Stephen Harvey. Stephen's mother, June Cox, also took the stand to try to fix the tarnish that had been done to her son's image because of Lynn. She denied every claim that Lynn made that Stephen was abusive towards her and that he also sexually assaulted the kids as well. June revealed that when her kids were taken from her back in England, that happened because she neglected those kids, and she was the sexual deviant, not Stephen. And after they moved to South Africa, Lynn had already had several affairs with a lot of different men, including her own daughter's boyfriend. At the end, Lynn, her son John, and also their employee, Mpomokwena, were sentenced to life in prison for the murder of Stephen Harvey. The judge commented that he didn't believe for a second that Lynn suffered any abuse in this marriage, and he further said that in previous marriages, she had no problem divorcing her husbands whenever she felt unhappy. So if she was suffering as much as she claimed to have been, that she could have done the same thing instead of killing Stephen. The judge believed that she did what she did purely out of greed. And what's worse about this is that she involved her own 2 kids in such a heinous act. And when it comes to Mpomokwena, the judge felt sympathy for him, that the hardness of his life got him to be involved in something like this. However, he knew that what he was doing was wrong, and he carried on anyway, so he had to be punished as well. The judge also said when it comes to John, he does see that he was manipulated by the lies that was fed to him by his mother. However, he benefited from this financially, so he also had to face punishment. I would like to know what you guys think about this case. Do you think Lynn was really abused by her husband, or was this just a cover-up for her to cover her schemes and also to cover her greed for money? Please do let me know in the comments. But yeah guys, that was the story of Stephen Harvey. This man suffered a great deal leading to the end of his life. No one deserves to die like this. So I really hope that he's resting in peace wherever he may be, because this is seriously heart-wrenching. Not only did this man have to suffer from the accident that changed his life for the worst, he also had to die in one of the most brutal way possible. And that just isn't right, guys. It's not. But that is all that I have for you guys on this case. Please do let me know what you think about it in the comments. I will be looking forward to hearing what you have to say. And also, if you enjoyed watching, please do me a big favor and press the like button so that the video and the channel can reach out to more people. I would seriously appreciate that. And also, thank you guys for hanging out with me today. As always, I do appreciate you taking time out of your day to support my channel. And again, if you are new here, please be part of the family and subscribe to the channel for more true crime content. That being said, I will see you guys in the next video. So until then, take care of yourselves, enjoy the rest of your day, and cheers.